Today, we're heading around the globe to take a closer look at a country with measured but promising crypto regulation, Taiwan. First, to understand how the space is being shaped in the East Asian country, we go to Timmy Shen, a Taipei-based Forkast news staff writer. Welcome to the show, Timmy.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, glad to have you on the show. And neighboring countries to Taiwan, as we know, they're looking to tighten their rules on crypto. Why is Taiwan taking a bit of a different approach?
So it's very interesting because Taiwan is sort of taking a more permissive approach of crypto retail investment specifically. They have warned investors about the risks, but they have not curbed crypto trading.
Yes, and those regulations that they have around crypto trading or of other things outside of crypto trading, what do you think about that? Do you think that that may change as well?
Yeah, I think actually there's not really a clearly articulated guideline in place at the moment, and the crypto industry remains largely unregulated. So many of the industry players, they just have to self-regulate. But however, there are some rules in place. Taiwan enacted regulations on STO, security token offering, in 2020, and also they introduced anti-money laundering rules that came into effect in July last year. So there are some rules in place. But as far as I know, in July, the FSC, they also asks banks and credit card companies not to allow credit cards as a means of payment for virtual assets providers. So I think there's some room, there's some regulation in place, but of course, those are not enough. And crypto players here in general, they are quite supportive of the policy so far. They think it's important to have regulations in place, and Taiwanese government are trying to do that right now.
Yes, and as we know in the crypto market, it is pretty hard to get a grasp on everything at once with such an emerging market. But as you stated, in 2021, Taiwan enacted the anti-money laundering rules for cryptocurrency service providers. And we know Taiwan's financial sector is highly regulated. But do you think that crypto may get to a point where it is just as highly regulated as the current financial market?
Yeah, there's a possibility there because we know the ML rules, they require exchanges in Taiwan to report transactions worth over 500,000 NTD, which is about 16,000 US dollars in cash. And exchanges also need to fulfill KYC requirements. So I think this is the least exchanges have to do when it comes to crypto trading. And we know that banks are heavily regulated in Taiwan. I've talked to some compliance officers there in the banks. If they are willing to take on crypto, they're quite conservative because they said if you want to regulate crypto exchanges, you just need to really boost up and ramp up your compliance budget and compliance efforts, because that's actually forms the biggest part of budget in banks. And if crypto exchanges are to do that, they really need to set aside a big budget for compliance.
Mm-hmm. And not just the budget, but also the time, right, to figure out these different rules and regulations, right? And one thing we've seen in the market is as more people start to join these centralized exchanges, there has been an increase in DeFi markets. What are your thoughts there with DeFi markets and exchanges and platforms that may come about to sort of combat some of these regulations?
Mm-hmm. So Central Bank of Taiwan, they actually came out last week and said that there's so much risk associated with DeFi platforms. There's scams and DeFi and frauds emerging over the past few months. And our regulators are really wary of that. So they actually said they're coming together with a few other authorities here in Taiwan to come up with some sort of solutions to tackle this issue. But there has nothing concrete yet. People in the industry, we're just expecting more regulation to come onto the DeFi space, but we just don't know what it is yet. Actually, I think nobody knows what it is. Yeah.
Well, that's always work in progress whenever you have a new emerging market, even with technology boom. People didn't know how to wrap their head around it, and now we've moved to a point where fintech is pretty regulated to a point where you have a clear understanding. So I see you there. I definitely agree with you. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a gray area. You also reported that Taiwan's financial regulator asked banks and credit card companies not to allow credit cards as a means of payment. What was their reasoning for that?
I actually called the central bank and called the FSC on that, and they didn't provide me with their reasoning. They just don't like people doing that. But the crypto players here, they're actually quite surprised at the move because they said there's not much of a difference if you pay, you purchase crypto in cash or in credit cards. And this move just shows another conservative side of our regulators on the financial sector. So I don't think the crypto industry here really welcomes that kind of move.
Oh yeah, it sort of sounds like when you ask your parents to do something and they say no, and you're like, why? They're like, just no. And it's really because they want to figure it out first, and then they can give you an explanation. So I see that there,
exactly,
and that does take time. Yep, and I love the fact that when asked, they said they gave you no explanation for it. I'm sure there'll be an explanation coming soon at some point. So Taiwan, you have in the country, they have been studying and testing a retail CBDC, otherwise known as a central bank digital currency. This prototype was completed about 3 months ago. So what's the latest on those efforts?
Mm-hmm. So I think they're also testing, in addition to retail, they're also testing wholesale CBDCs. But I would say that Taiwan's efforts are really, really in its infancy right now. So there's no massive pilots or no massive tests like what China does now. So it's really slow, I would say. Our government is really not taking this as a priority for now. I think crypto regulation is more of a priority now.
Mm-hmm. And one of the main factors of the regulation coming into place sort of is the market, right? In a bear market, it may seem as though, hey, nobody's really interested. But in a bull market, you may see that increase. So I want to ask, the bull market returns, let's say next year, just for example, do you think that CBDCs will be pushed more as competition to crypto?
Only if CBDCs are actually put in place in Taiwan. I don't think people are actually discussing a lot about CBDC here in Taiwan. And that move, that move of our government is more like, to me, a PR move. I don't think they are putting too much effort on that. But if the bear market does arrive next year, maybe people will start discussing about CBDCs. But right now, I think people are still more focused on crypto, stable coins, things like that.
Right. And of course, Taiwan's Ministry of Digital Affairs officially launched in late August. So congrats to Taiwan for getting that together. And it comes, basically as China continues to target the country with a series of cyber attacks. We know that Nancy Pelosi actually visited Taiwan recently, last month. And this ministry is actually using Web3 to combat cyber attacks. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, that's very interesting. So this new ministry, they actually adopted IPFS technology to boost its cybersecurity capabilities. We know that there's this ongoing information war between China and Taiwan, and this has appeared to have extended to the Web3 space. So the ministry said that they are tackling this issue with IPFS technology to offer a useful means of combating DDoS attacks, specifically from China.
Yep. And explain to us DDoS attacks. Some of our viewers may not know what that is.
So these are cyber attacks that China are using as a form to spread fake news and to break down a site if they don't want you to access it. So what Taiwan is doing now is use this IPFS technology to guard against that. So the DDoS attacks will not happen and occur in this event. And to add on to that, our new ministry is actually setting up a sandbox recently. The ministry, Audrey Tang, said that she will start a ministry-level sandbox where the government will put out some blockchain use cases. For example, she said they will issue NFTs and also use some blockchain technology to process government documentation and paperwork. So I think the setup of this new ministry is really helpful and promising to the development of Web3 in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so it looks like we found a great use case for Web3 going into the future. So that's always promising. And in the future, do you think that Taiwan can become a fintech hub with the regulation in place or some of the advancements they've had? Do you think that Taiwan can become a fintech hub where businesses and people recognize it in the crypto space?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic on that. I think we have great talent. We have great engineers here in Taiwan. And there are actually so many different kinds of blockchain startups here in Taiwan. There's this NFT marketplace called Lutex. There's also this company that builds Thundercore, which is a public blockchain. So you see all kinds of blockchain startups here burgeoning. So yeah, I do believe there's a dynamic Web3 scene here in Taiwan, and yeah, I think that the future is quite bright for me.